Recording. Hello, ladies, and welcome to episode 4 of our online Witchcraft Academy. So we've covered the basics. Tonight, we're going to cover the juicy stuff, the divination, the thing you all want to know. Tell me what's happening in the future. I have no idea. All of this stuff, right? And as the archetypes, please bear with me. I'm bending down and coming back because I have a whole array of amazing divination tools here that I'm going to be talking about. But, we've talked about the archetypes of the witch. So this is the oracle. And I have gone a little bit oracle-y. I've got my Mystic Meg earrings on. I did look for a headscarf so I could go full on Mystic Meg, but I couldn't find one at such short notice. But we are looking at the oracle. And this is a massive part of our witchness, if you like. It's our intuition. It's how we connect with that intuition. It's how we connect with parts of ourselves, how we divine the future. And there's so many different methods and different ways that we can do that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this tonight. And as I say, I've got many things here. So the dictionary definition of divination. Here we go. The dictionary definition of divination is the practice of seeking knowledge of the future or the unknown by supernatural means. And as witches, we tend to use a lot of divination. So I'm going to cover different types of divination, different histories of divination. But I'm also going to look at the divination that I use on a daily basis. So we're going to cover all types. But really, what is divination? Well, I guess it's fortune telling. It is the Mystic Meg. It's the practice of interpreting signs to understand the present and predict the future. It can also be used to discover hidden knowledge or the source of problems. And there's so many things that divination can tell us. Divination comes in so many different forms. We're all quite familiar with things like the tarot or palmistry or the runes. They all have amazing names. So the tarot is actually the art of cartomancy. How cool is that? And they all have these amazing names. And obviously at the Wild Women's Academy, we have our own tarot expert, Fauna Rain. And the ladies who did the tarot class that finished a few months ago, we've got a new one starting in September. The ladies who finished that have become a little bit obsessed with tarot, with how much it's helping them in their daily lives. And they've got this group where they do a daily card pull and they interpret the card, and they're finding that it's really helpful. It's really guiding them. And it's also giving them power and strength to trust themselves and trust their own intuition, to interpret their own methods of what comes. And really, the most important thing about divination is that we trust ourselves. Now, I'm going to recommend books and cards and all kinds of things to you tonight. But ultimately, just like when I teach Reiki or I teach psychic development, trust yourself. Whatever you read in a book, whatever you read in the definition of a card, if it feels like it means something more or something different, then please, please trust yourself, because divination really is just a tool. And all that intuition is inside you, all that knowledge, all that knowing. And I've been working with a lady today, and we went to deep places. We went to her Akashic records, and all that knowledge was there. So it is there, it's within you, but divination tools help us to connect with it. From a shadow work perspective, and you know how much I love my shadow work, they also help us to connect with the things we don't want to hear, the parts of ourselves we don't want to face, the situations in our life we're trying to avoid. So they are a massive part of being a witch, of being intuitive, and they have been used for millennia, I would say, if not, like, there's the history of tarot, for example. It starts in like 1430, but I'm pretty sure that it goes way beyond that. Just like when we talk about Reiki and Reiki 1, and it says that it was started by Dr. Asui in the 1890s. And then when we learn Masters Reiki, it goes way back, and they start talking about Lemurian times. So the art of divination and the different types of divination are millennia old. Like, they are thousands and thousands, if not millions of years old. And also, it's probably the thing that I think most people are drawn to when they, like, a card reading goes down a treat. People would much rather deal with that than their messy shadow work. But as a species, we have this fear of the unknown. We have this fear of not knowing what's coming. We have this need to know and understand. And if I had £1 for every time a client has asked me about their future, or, oh, if I just knew that this would happen, it's like, yeah, I'd be living in the Bahamas now and I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. Well, I might be, but I'd be sitting on a nice island doing so. But we are so drawn to knowing the future. We are so programmed as human beings to want to know more, to want to discover more, and actually to soothe our soul, because it creates, like, we know we're born and we know one day we're going to die, but we don't know when. And I think that is one of the most difficult things of being a human being, this unknowing, this living every day of our lives, trusting that we're going to be still there at the end of it. Like, it's a big thing, isn't it, when you actually think about it? And we do say it can be any time. And I know this is a little bit dark and deep, but it isn't really, is it? Because as human beings, we live with that every day. And we live with the unknown, and we live with the fact that we don't know what the outcomes are going to be. So we're always looking for ways of finding out what the outcomes can be. So divination is very much there to soothe our anxiety, soothe our soul, give us hope. But there are other forms of divination. So things like tarot, things like the runes, they're future predictors. They're us looking at what's happening in our lives. But they're also energy divination tools. So, for example, my favorite, like, I use this, there you go, put it all ready to be picked up. So it was very easy to find, and it's disappeared into its little bag. So pendulums. So I've got one of my pendulums here. So pendulums. So an amazing and ancient form of divination. And a lot of people have a pendulum to ask a yes or no question. The amount of times I've been asked to get this pendulum out. Am I pregnant? Does he love me? Like, there's so many things that I've used this pendulum for. So it can give a yes or no answer. It can tell me yes or no, but it also can be used to read energy. So there are the divination tools where we are looking at the future, where we're trying to understand a situation, where we're looking at cards maybe, or runes. There are the forms of divination that help us to understand ourselves. So things like palmistry, reading our palm and reading the lines and the marks on our palms, or astrology. Now, I'm a bit passionate about astrology. It's one of my deepest passions, and I start a diploma in October in astrology. So I'm afraid I'm going to bore you with far more astrology in the future. But having my birth chart read was, and I'm not exaggerating, life-changing, literally life-changing. I had been sensitive all my life. I'd felt other people's feelings. I had had this deep sensitivity and understanding of the earth and how every life was just as valid as my own life. And I didn't share that with my family. I didn't get that from my upbringing. It was like this innate feeling inside of me. And when I had my full natal chart done, my full birth chart, it revealed that I had 9 planets in water. And the lady who read my chart actually cried and said, oh my God, how are you doing life? How are you doing life when you're that sensitive? How are you helping other people when you're that sensitive? And then she looked at my chart and she went, oh, I see. You've got a Scorpio moon. That explains it. And literally, I understand what she meant now. But it's such an amazing way to understand ourselves. And more than that, so I was sexually abused as a child. I had a lot of abuse from men, from my father, from brothers. And that was very present in my life. That's in my birth chart. That's literally there throughout my birth chart. All these problems with men, these difficulties with relationships. So for me, having my birth chart done, although a form of divination, opened a whole world of other emotions. Like, it was the first time that I ever felt validated. It was the first time that I ever felt like, oh my God, I'm not crazy. This is true. I am actually sensitive. So it was a massive, massive shift in how I felt about myself. So that's a different form. That's us understanding ourselves, reading our own palms, our own lines on our hands that tell us so much, or reading our own birth chart. But it's still divination. So there's so many different types of divination that we can use. And as witches, as wild women, as women, in fact, as intuitive beings, we're so naturally drawn to that. Like tea leaves. Women have read tea leaves for centuries. So this is not new. This is not something, and yes, now we have many oracle cards and beautiful ways of divining, modern ways of divining. But this is ancient. Like people used to have a cup of tea and read the leaves and go, oh, what's going to happen tomorrow? This is a part of being human. I'm sure that those cavemen sitting in caves were there throwing stones on the ground, trying to work out what's going to happen tomorrow. And then they were probably looking at the crops. They were probably looking at the weather. They were probably looking at what was going to happen because they needed to survive. But the need to know is a fundamental human trait. And this is why there are so many forms of divination. So I'm going to kind of go through them and give you a little bit of history about them and a little bit of information about them. And as I say, all of this is part of our oracle archetype, that part of us that people have come to for centuries to ask our advice, to seek our wisdom. As I like to call it, wise counsel. People come and seek wise counsel, and they do. And people have come to wise women and witches for centuries and asked us to read their palms or their cards or their runes or whatever it is. But that is a place that we have in history where we have used divination for so many centuries. So the types of divination, as I've touched on a few of them already. So I'm really, really passionate about the astrology. And in actual fact, I don't really class astrology as being divination. It's a lot deeper than divination. It's a lot deeper than, it's a science and it's an art form and it's ancient. And it's one of the most powerful things that we've ever connected to as human beings. You know, my feelings are sometimes a little bit out there. Well, I believe that we were given the knowledge of astrology by beings from other planets. So, and I really do believe that. So I would strongly recommend that you get a birth chart, and you don't have to pay. It's great if you can afford to pay somebody to interpret that birth chart, to tell you what those things mean. But actually, you can get a really good printout of 12 pages that will show you your full birth chart, where all your planets are, what your main three are. So your sun sign, that's our normal horoscope. So you probably know what that is, but it's certainly worth looking at what your moon sign is. As I say, I'm all water. I'm all Pisces and Cancer. And really, I should be walking around dressed in purple flowing gowns with rainbows and unicorns. But I don't, because I've got a Scorpio moon. And the images for Scorpio moon are that dark priestess type person with a big pentacle. And it's like this, it's the darker side, it's Scorpio. And so that's where this comes from, that part of me. And people used to guess my star sign as being Aries. They used to say, oh, you're definitely a fire sign. Oh, you're such an alpha female. It's like, you should see me when I'm in my crying stage, when I'm really sensitive in a field. I'm not, but that's my Scorpio moon. So this is why it's so interesting. So I'm going to recommend to you a website. So it's Cafe Astrology. So if you go to www.cafeastrology.com and you click on there, you will find a free natal birth chart. Now, of all the ones I found that are free online, this is probably the best. And all you need to know for that is your name, your date of birth, and your time of birth. So if you have a cusp birthday, meaning that you're born on the last or the first day of your sun sign, your normal standard horoscope, then that can be quite affected by the time of birth. So if you know your time of birth, that's fantastic. Do a full birth chart, and that will actually, if you do that on Cafe Astrology, it will analyze it all for you. It will give you a full breakdown of your full birth chart and what that means. So you don't have to interpret it yourself. And they also include things that aren't necessarily included in standard birth charts, like where your Lilith is, and a few of the more exciting and more the darker elements of your horoscope. So I would really strongly recommend that you get one of those. Now, I know that some of the ladies in the coven, we did a whole coven on astrology, and some of you struggle to understand it, but it will give you a breakdown of where your planets are. So There are four, because it's broken down into the elements. So it's the elements again. So we're back to last month and the elements, but they're broken down into earth, air, fire, and water. And there's three in each that make up the 12 signs of the zodiac. And each of those three are different. So it's quite complex when you get into it. Like, I'm doing a 2-year diploma, and I don't think that's even going to scratch the surface. Like, that's how in-depth. You can study astrology for a lifetime. So there's our own personal astrology. There's our predicting of what we're having, what our life is like, what's going to happen in our future. And actually, I got mine out recently because of all this studying, and I had an appointment, a session with my future mentor, Melissa, and she went through my birth chart. And it's really interesting because around about my midlife, I am completely changing direction. And I'm going to be doing something completely different. And I'm out there in front of people, and all this came through. And I was like, at 20 years old, I never thought I'd be changing my life midlife, like in my 40s. And here I am. I don't do this. I was a sales director. I was selling shampoo and gas safety products and other really boring things to people. And now I do this. And if you'd asked me even 10 years ago, in fact, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, probably actually even 2 years ago, if I'd be doing what I'm doing right now, I'd have said no way. So, but my birth chart knew. And actually, I had my sister's birth chart done for my niece, and she didn't want to look at it because she didn't want to know the future. She didn't want to have prior knowledge of what her daughter's life was going to unfold to be. So personally, I would want to know, but this is, personal choice. So my niece is double fire. That might have added to it. There's a lot of fire in that house. So of all the divination forms, and I don't really class astrology as divination, I would highly recommend that you do that you have your birth chart done and do that and print it out. If you print it out, you can look at it and refer back to it all the time. You can go back to all the different things that are in there, and it will give you a really good idea of what that means. So it's a fascinating thing. As a novice, just look at where your planets are in the main 4 elements. So how many you've got in earth, how many you've got in fire, how many you've got in air, and how many you've got in water, because that's really simple. So fire signs are obviously fiery and passionate and make things happen, and they're fire starters and they get things going. Earth signs are very grounded, more sensible, more practical. Water signs, very emotional, very feeling. Air signs, creative, communication. So even from the very basics of astrology, you can really get a good feel for it. So of all the things we're going to talk about tonight, I think that's probably the most important and life-changing thing that you can do, is to have your astrology. Then we've got other forms, haven't we? So palmistry kind of falls into the realms of astrology, in that it's reading our own personal history. And if you look at your hand now, you'll see that there are 3 major lines on your hand. So across the top of your hand, underneath your fingers, I'm trying to see in the light now of mine, this line here, this main top one, that kind of curves around the side of your hand, that's your heart line. So by looking at this heart line, we can say all about your relationships, how many children you're going to have, how your life's going to pan out as far as relationships are concerned. I remember a palm reader looking at my hand and kind of going, ooh. I was like, oh, does it show my 9 engagements on my line? And she's like, pretty much, yes. It's just a wiggly line that keeps crossing over loads of other lines. So this is our heart line. And then we've got our headline. So that line that comes from here, down your hand in the middle line, that's your headline. And then this line down the middle of your hand, this is your lifeline. So if anybody knows anything about palmistry, I'm just going to put mine on there so you can see it. I don't think you can see it in this light, but I've got a massive fork down here, and I was told this was a writer's fork. So I was always told, now Fauna, our palmistry teacher, will probably message me when she's listened to this and say, oh no, but I was always told that your left is your potential, like the potential you have in life. And the right is how you're going to use that potential and what you're going to do with it. So, but it's a fascinating art. And obviously, unlike tarot cards or other forms of divination, runes, etc., our hands are completely personal to us. Those lines on our hands tell us so much about ourselves. And we actually have a workshop. So it's the first one we've done at the Wild Women's Academy. On the 5th of October, Fauna Rain is doing a palmistry workshop at the Wild Women's Academy. So she's teaching all the basics and basically how to read your own hand, what that means, what that looks like. So it's a really powerful thing. Also, it's an amazing dinner party trick, like literally. Oh, let's have a look at your hand. Oh, I see. Like it's just so much fun. And it is fun, but it's one of those that comes into self-discovery. So I think for me, that's always the most fun. I'm never as focused on the future. I always want to know more about me. Self-obsessed much. But I do think that palmistry is a really fascinating and amazing thing. So if you're drawn to it, we have a course with Stevie in October. And it's ancient, like that goes back. I tried to look up the history of when the first palmistry was recorded. And it's like, it's kind of so old that there's nothing, it goes back before time. So human beings have been looking at our hands, and there's many other forms of reading things. There's reading the iris, there's reading our auras, there's so many different forms of divination connected to our human bodies. There's so many different ways we can look at that and interpret it. So it's a fascinating one, absolutely fascinating. And I think astrology and palmistry, they sort of come into the understanding of us. And then we've got more traditional, I'm trying to work these out, more traditional forms of divination. So obviously, most people, if you say divination, most people think of the tarot. Most people think of tarot reading and tarot readers. And it's definitely one of the most popular, one of the most common forms, and it's ancient. So they reckon it goes back to the 1400s, and it was invented in Italy, and it was used extensively in Italy. But really, the tarot is a journey. It's a story, and it's a story in cards. It's the story of the Fool. And in tarot, there are major arcana or arcana, depending on how you pronounce it, and there are the minor arcana. So there's 78 cards in total in a tarot deck. And they're split again into 4 suits that all represent the elements. And that story of the tarot is the story of the Fool going on his journey. So the tarot tends to represent different vices and virtues and different situations in our life. So because of this story, and really when you're learning tarot, you learn the story of the Fool. And as you learn the story of the Fool, all the cards take on a whole new meaning because they have that story behind them. And actually that's how Fauna teaches tarot. She connects you to the story so that you're not just learning about a tarot card, you're learning about the story, and then every card that you get immediately takes you into that space of what part of the story that is. And that helps you to then be able to see where you're at, your story. So the tarot is absolutely fascinating. There are so many things you can learn about the tarot. And tarot readings, I had one recently from Fauna, actually, and my God, was it bang on. And usually I tend to find that when we have tarot readings, it's because we want to know about a situation. We have a specific situation that we're dealing with, and we want to find out more about that. So tarot is very helpful for that. It's very helpful. It works very well with shadow work because often, and not all the cards in the tarot are lovely, are they? We've recently done our editorial for Scene magazine, and we've done it about the number 13. So we celebrated our 13th coven. There was a lot of talk about 13. I know Deborah, Didi, our numerology teacher, and Fauna were talking about 13. So I've just written this article all about the number 13, and it included the death card because in the tarot, number 13 is the death card. So not all of the tarot is love and light and all wonderful news. Some of it is a lot deeper and a lot more shadowy. The Ten of Swords, for example, that came up in my recent reading. That's kind of when we're in the depths of despair, when we're in that place where we're in a liminal state where nothing feels like it's going right. So the tarot can teach us so much about ourselves, about what we're hiding from ourselves and situations and what other people are hiding from us. So it's an amazing, amazing art. Fauna does have another course starting in October on Mondays. Now, I think that is the 15th, Monday the 15th. It starts mid-October and it's on Tuesdays. Tuesday night at 7 till 9. So she has got one running in October. As I say, the feedback from the other ladies was incredible. And I'm going to show you a little bit about my tarot. So Stevie uses the traditional tarot deck. I don't. I've got several decks. So this is one of my absolute favorites. And this is the Book of Shadows Tarot. So this doesn't have the traditional sets of like pentacles and wands and swords. This has the elements. So this is actually earth, air, fire, and water. And even the major arcana, the Fool's Journey, are specifically more witchcraft. So I love this deck. As you can see, it's well worn and I use that all the time. Another amazing deck, which I really do love this one, is the Tarot of Light and Shadow. Now, my mom actually bought me this, and to say I was impressed was a slight understatement. But what this actually has, if I can show you, is it has two decks. So it has the light and the dark. And this is a tarot deck that's used to do shadow readings, to look at a situation from a light and a shadow perspective. So it goes even more in depth. And I think that's why I loved it, because it's got those two aspects. So once you know the basics of the tarot and the story of the tarot and you can interpret that, it's all down to your own intuition. And then you can start using other means and other methods. So that's one of my favorites. And also this one. So this is a beautiful deck. Very elemental. An amazing lady called Shelley. You might know Shelley if you're in Coventry. So Shelley bought me these. So these are the Cosmic Tribe Tarot. And these are really beautiful, like artwork. I know Fauna has hundreds of decks, literally, of tarot. So there are so many different ones. If you're going to buy, the tradition is that you're not supposed to buy your own tarot deck. You're supposed to be gifted a tarot deck. But we're modern women, hey, so if we want to buy one, we will. But it is lovely if somebody can gift it you. But it's important that you feel that you resonate with it. And learning the tarot, like I say, if we learn it intuitively and we learn that story, then the tarot kind of comes alive for us and it takes on a life of its own and it's really magical. But there are some amazing tarot books out there. I have to say, this is the best one I've ever found. So this is called The Ultimate Guide to Tarot Card Meanings, and it's by Bridget Esselmont. And it's a massive, big, thick, amazing book. And it has so much information in here. So not only do you have the cards, so let's look here, look, the Fool. So it will tell you a little bit about the description, keywords, quotes, description. It goes through general meanings, career, finance, work. Then it goes through personality types and relationships and love. It also targets and gives you information about the spirituality of that course, of that card even, and also the reverse tarot meanings. So it's one of the most in-depth tarot books that I've ever found, and I've had that for quite a long time. So again, a really amazing book to learn the meanings, but I would say trust your intuition. And if you learn the story of the tarot, you can very easily interpret those cards with the story. So the tarot is exceptional and amazing, and I think lots of you probably love the tarot. So if you are interested in learning, then Fauna Rain is your lady. Now, the other thing that's really interesting, this is quite a new one to me. Well, it isn't, but it sort of is as well. Knowing it from a little bit, like numerology. So how many of you get in the car and see like 444? Oh, angel numbers. Oh, I keep seeing this number everywhere. Oh, everywhere's 333. I've been seeing threes all day today. 333, 33, oh, everywhere. And numerology is, again, one of those ancient. When you try to look at the history of numerology, it's really hard to find it because it just goes back thousands and thousands of years, because since we had maths, we've had numerology. And arithmancy was the original name, so tarot, cartomancy. That's actually the art of reading the tarot, cartomancy. With numerology, arithmancy is what it used to be called. Now, or onomancy. So it's got another fabulous word. Now, we've got if any of you were at Super Coven, you will have heard Deborah, Dee Dee, talking about numerology and about the number 13. And Deborah's actually running a course. So it starts in September. So hers is the 16th of September and it's a 10-week course. And when I actually looked at what we're learning in that course, she's covering things like our destiny and life path numbers. And we're learning about how to determine our own life path and our own destiny through the date of birth, through the numbers that we have connected to us. And it also goes the 4 road systems. So you look into how you can predict the future with numerology, and also the karmic lessons and the karmic numbers. But there's do you have a pen? So I'd like you to get a pen and a piece of paper. So we're going to just look what your life path number is. So if you don't know this, we're going to do this really quickly now because this is really helpful. So in order to calculate your life path number, what you're going to do is draw out your date of birth. So the date, so mine is the 20th, and then it is the 3rd, so 03, so 23, and then 1976, because I'm very old now. So 1976. And what you're going to do is you're going to add all of those numbers up together. So I would add 2, and then there's an O because it's 20. So there's no O. So I'm adding 2 plus 3 plus 1 plus 9 plus 7 plus 6. So I'm literally adding up as if it was a sum. So if you write down your date of birth and you just put a plus sign in between every number and add it all up to one number. And then if you have 2 numbers, you're going to add those 2 numbers together to give you one number. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that, because if you've got a calculator, suggest it's like a trend. I know. Yes. 1+. Oh no, I haven't got enough toes or fingers. So what you do is you add every number together, and then you have a double digit number, and then you'll add those 2 numbers together to give you a life path number. And that life path number, so it's easier if you do this writing down, because I'm watching a few of you going, and is it, no, I still can't work it out. Because if I should have actually, I've done this so many times, and I know my life path number. But if you don't, you add all the dates together until you get one number. So what you're looking for is one single number. So the standard numbers in numerology are 1 to 9, right? And they're the primary numbers. So there's a lot of maths involved because this is numbers. And those primary numbers, those numbers in order. So have you got your number? So once you've got your life path number, I'm going to tell you what those numbers mean. So my life path number is number 1, and that is the leader. And here I am leading you all. So if you have a life path 1, that means you came to this earth to be a leader, to guide and mentor others. Okay. If you have a number 2, you are a diplomat. You are here. You are a natural mediator. You naturally are a peacemaker. And that's your role. And you tend to take that role, the role of the diplomat. And obviously we go into a lot more detail. So this is a very sort of brief overview. Yes, you're typing in the messages what your numbers are, and I'm like, yes. Okay, so we've got to go all the way through them to find out what number 9 means. So number 2 is the diplomat. Number 3 is the creative. Number 4 is the builder. Number 5, the adventurer. Number 6, the nurturer. Number 7, the thinker. Number 8, that's got leader again. Interesting. Deborah will correct me on this. Number 9. Number 9 is the humanitarian. Now, obviously this is an art, it's a science. So just adding up the days of your birth give you an actual, like, literally, that is such a powerful thing, right? And that's just adding up your birth date. So all the numbers in your life, dates, marriage dates, all of it, literally, numbers are so connected and magical. And really, the numerology links into astrology. It's an ancient science. It's one of those Da Vinci sciences. It's one of the things that we've worked with for many, many centuries and gained great wisdom. And as well as our primary numbers and the meaning of, what that means for our life, we have the master numbers. So the master numbers are 11, 22, 33. And they're thought to be more powerful numbers because they represent a higher level of consciousness. So I'm guilty of this also. It used to really piss me off, but I do it myself quite often. When I used to see the things where people would price things and it would be £77, and because it sounds better. So we actually did our wild swimming on Monday and it was £33. And it's like, and everyone's like, oh, it's just so annoying to bring the £3. Can't you make it a round number? And I've always worked in round numbers. But the reason people use those, because they're considered master numbers, because they have deeper meaning. So if you end up with a number for your birth, your life path number, that's 11 or 22 or 33, then please look into that master number as well, because that will be relevant. So really, really powerful. And that 10-week course, I'm actually doing that with Deborah because it's fascinating. And actually, unlike tarot cards or all of these things that involve something else, numerology you can do on the spot, and you can do it with every single person you work with. I can remember that it's thrown me now. I'm looking at your messages. I shouldn't be doing that while I'm doing this, should I? So yes, numbers massively powerful. So that course with Deb starts on I think it's the 16th of September, and that's on Monday nights for 10 weeks. So I'm going to do that because I think that's fascinating. When I was a manager, when I used to employ people, they used to send in their CVs with all their important information on. And the only thing I was really interested in was their date of birth, because I used to do a full astrology chart on them. And then I decide who I was going to employ before I even met them. So that's not ideal, is it? Not if you've done 6 degrees and you're hoping that that's going to carry its weight in your career. So palmistry, so numerology, amazing. I highly recommend it. It's absolutely one of the most fascinating things. And I'd love to know what you found out from your birth numbers, your life path numbers. The other thing that's ancient and very deeply connected to us as witches are the runes. So the runes are so ancient, and they're mostly Germanic and Northern European. So the Italians were there with their tarot cards and their passion, and then the Vikings were there with their rocks, with things scratched into them. So runes are incredible. Now, I'm fascinated by the runes. I own a set of runes, and I have witches runes, which are slightly different, which are sort of more tarot based. And I actually have the Nordic runes. But Philippa, our amazing wild woman, is going to be doing a course on runes. So if you came wild swimming on Monday, she gave you a rune, right? She gave you the rune of water, and she hand painted and crafted that rune for you. And I've got the meaning to send to you. But Philippa has been taught the runes by her ancient grandmother, and she is an expert in the Elder Futhark. Always sounds very rude. The old Futhark, the German set of runes. And so what are runes? Well, they're an alphabet. That's what they really are. They're an ancient alphabet used by Germanic people. And when you start looking at the history, you can go back to the 3rd century, but it was even before then. They're the oldest known form of writing in Scandinavia. They are those alphabets. And there are several types of runes that come from around the world. So the Germanic runes are the Elder Futhark runes. And that's what Philippa is going to be teaching. So she's doing a workshop on the runes. And then you've got the Nordic runes, also known as the Viking runes. So they also trace back to that area of the Northern Europe areas. And then you've got the Celtic runes. So that's known as the Ogham. So you've probably heard Gemma talking a lot about the Ogham. She loves the Ogham. And they're the Celtic runes, or the Ogham tree alphabet. But they're also classed as runes. And bind runes, or bandrun in Icelandic, they're runes where there are runes joined together. So you remember when we made sigils? If you were in Coven, we made sigils. And what a sigil is it's an interpretation of a symbol or a word put into a symbol. So you take a word, you remove the vowels, you're left with only several letters, and you create a beautiful pattern or picture from those letters. It's a really powerful way of casting magic and weaving magic. So The bind runes are when we combine runes. So there are several types of runes. Now, my set here are, as I say, they are the Viking runes. And I'm going to pull a rune for you, because it wouldn't be divination if we didn't do a bit of that with it. Okay, let's have a look what we've got. Oh, ooh. Okay, so I'm going to show you my rune really closely. There we go. So I will try and pronounce how this is. Echwas. I never pronounce this. I'm not Nordic, but it's actually the rune of movement and progress and moving forward. So very apt. Maybe that's apt for you. Maybe you're on a bit of a journey at the moment. Maybe you're in a transitional phase, shifting into new things. This is what that rune represents: the movement, the progress, being in a state of flux, a state of transition, a state of everything being up in the air. But the positive sign is that you're moving, that you're not stagnant, you're moving forward, that progress is coming, that you're making progress, that you're in a state of progress, even if it doesn't feel like it. So they're massively powerful. Mine are on obsidian. So, you know me and my black stones, I love obsidian. So I absolutely love the runes. And I'm going to be doing that course with Philippa because I think it's fascinating. It's also the form of divination that's most connected to the witch's runes. So absolutely beautiful. I have a little book now. I did ask Philippa's opinion of these things. She's like, so, but this is the Book of Runes. I've had this, God knows, I've had this since I was about 18, I think. This is a really old book. But again, once we know the general meanings of these, we can interpret them. So we can interpret what that means. I know I'm in a liminal state. I know I'm in a space of transition. I know I'm in a space of movement and progress. As much as I'm holding on to everything back here going, no, I am being moved forward. So I'm in that space. And I know some of you are too. So very, very powerful and beautiful runes. And how are we doing for time? Oh, we're not too badly. Finally, the energy divination tools. So you've heard us, where did I put that? There it is. You've heard us talk a lot at the Wild Women's Academy about the ley line. And what are ley lines? Well, ley lines are energetic lines that are within the earth, like a grid system. And if you had to equate them to something within us, they would be our veins. So they carry the energy through the earth. And there are varying different types of ley lines. There are feminine and masculine. I wouldn't say there are good or bad, but there are positive and negative, just like with everything else. And Gemma is an expert on ley lines. It's not something. So I had my first set of divining rods only 2 years ago. So I'm going to show you my little rods. So my little rods are very posh. They come in a little bag and they actually screw together. But you've probably seen Gemma's when you've been at the academy, where she brings her lovely rods. And right, I'm going to try and do this on the, this isn't going to work now, is it? There we go. So basically what divining rods are, if you've ever seen them, are two sticks, two rods, and you can actually use a stick for this. So if you find a stick that looks like a Y, where it's got a long stick and then like a Y shape at the top, and you hold on to the two Y shapes, you can find water. So divining and dowsing with these rods, so there's one rod, look. So these actually move. Oh, that's straight in my face. So I'm going to let this, right, so can you, okay. So it will start as it's, see that? As it's starting, what it's doing is reading all the energy. So I'm not touching this. This is just going around and it's reading all the energy in the room. And in a moment, it should come to a nice, steady, there you go. Okay. So can you see how it's going from left to right? So it's actually picking up any energy in this space. So you know that they used to look for water, right? That dowsing for water, they used to do this. So this is an art form. People pay this and you can find water in the land because it's picking up the energy of the land. So when Gemma holds these rods in the middle of the Wild Women's Academy, it does this. And it starts to go round and round like it is now. Right. So I'm controlling this with my own energy. So I'm telling it to spin. Right, I'm going to tell it to stop. Okay. I've just told it to stop pointing at me. There we go. So they're controlled with our own energy. So there's an amazing book. This is actually one of Gemma's, Dowsing for Beginners. And you can see him there, the little man with his little, holding his little rod. Bless him. He's Richard. Dick with his little rod in his hand. Bless him. So this book is called Dowsing for Beginners, How to Find Water, Wealth and Lost Objects. So dowsing rods, like these are the most incredible things. Mine are actually very fancy, so they fit together there. They have little, they fit together and they go back into a little bag and they're very pretty. So we can find energy ley lines in the earth with these. We can find water under the earth. And that is actually classed as an exact science. So you can hire a person, if you're building a house, you would hire a dowser to come and find water on your land. It's how they used to find wells. So how do you think they found water in ancient times? Water very rarely flows on the surface. It does if it's a river, does if it's a lake. That water we can see on the surface. Most water we can't. How do you think people found a well? How do you think people found the water all the way down there? They doused for it. And they literally found it with energetic rods, reading the energy of the earth. Because if you think about it, the energy of water is a flow. So it's like an energy line. It's a very powerful flow of energy. And water, when we're working with witchcraft or the elements, water is our feelings, our emotions. So it has a very distinct energy, a very powerful energy. And I'm doing a lot of work at the moment with water. I've recently had my water ionizer delivered and it was installed yesterday. So I've been drinking amazing Kangen water and water that is an 8.5 pH. And literally, as soon as I tasted that, the energy of the water is incredible. You can literally feel it. So water is extremely powerful. It's not just like a mill pool, is it? Like it's fierce and it's ferocious and there's a real energy to water. So dowsing rods and dowsing helps us to find water, to find energy lines, to find ley lines. So it's absolutely fascinating. And the people that are watching this going, oh my God, yes, let's go into nature with our dowsing rods, go and see what we can find. It's absolutely incredible. This is how we knew about the ley line in the academy. So what actually happened when we got to the academy was we walked in through the door, and obviously Gemma and I are both quite sensitive to energy, and it's like, woo, whoa. And I stood in the middle of the room where often my clients stand and go, whoa, this feels like I'm on a boat. It's like, because it's on an energy vortex. What that means is the cardinal points of a compass, so north, east, south, and west, cross in the center of that room, literally in the center. So they create this 4 pathways of energy crossing, which creates an energy vortex. If you've ever watched Charmed, it's the nexus in the basement. But that's how we read it. And we walked into that building and I got my compass. I often carry a compass as a witch. I like to know where I'm pointing. And I got my compass out and it started to go round. It didn't read true north. It just went. I was like, holy shit, this is an energy vortex in here. Jim was like, I need to get my rods. I think there's a ley line. And we were both standing there with our compasses and our pendulums, like, holy shit, the energy of this building is incredible. And that energy shifts. You felt it probably at Covens. You felt it if you've been a client of mine in that room. The temperature shifts. The space itself can feel very womb-like, but also sometimes it can feel kind of cold and a little bit. When I'm doing Reiki training, it gets incredibly hot. And everybody goes boiling hot, a bit like they do at Coven. And I'm sure most of you have experienced that when we've been in that space. So amazing. Dowsing rods are amazing. My newfound toy, love them. The other thing is, as we talked about at the very beginning, the pendulum. So I train people in this because it's part of what we do for Reiki. But really, a pendulum, so if you go into Rock and Soul Crystals in Newport, our beautiful friend Arancha has a lovely selection of pendulums. But pendulums can be so many different things, just like divining rods. Divining rods can be a stick. Mine are beautiful metal ones. Gemma's are different than mine. It doesn't really matter. It's about the energy that they're picking up and whatever feels comfortable to you. Pendulums, so this is not my one I have at work. This is actually my one I had from my hypnosis training. And I was really shocked. So when I did my hypnosis training, I was already a Reiki master teacher. I was already using pendulums to read people's energy centers. And then I did my hypnosis training after my theta training because I wanted it to be more scientific and I wanted to go into the real sort of science of the subconscious and the brain. And then my hypnosis teacher sent me a pendulum. And I'm like, what's this? I thought we were doing hypnosis. She's like, oh, yes. Now, when you learn about pendulums in hypnosis, the understanding and the teaching is that it's your own unconscious mind moving the pendulum. I don't think I necessarily buy into that because literally I'm holding this pendulum completely still. And if I ask it a question like, am I Jessica? I'm not moving my hand. You can actually watch my hand not moving. And my yes is a nod, so it's backwards and forwards. And that's telling me yes. And my hand isn't actually moving, and I'm doing this so you can actually see it. And if I say, am I a big, hairy black man called Dave? I don't know why it's a black man. I'm sorry, I'm not racist. I don't know why that came out. Oh, look. No, I'm not. I'm not a man called Dave. Not now I've had the sex change anyway. But a pendulum can be used for asking questions, yes or no, but it can also be used for reading energy lines. So exactly the same as divining rods, we can use this to find water, we can use this to find energy, we can use this to give us answers. I use this and I teach this for reading our energy centers. So our chakras in the body are energy centers that are deeply connected to our aura. Our whole energetic body is connected to these energy centers and they spin and they're like funnels that come out of the body. And so when we lower this, and I'm going to try and test this now. You watch, my chakras will be closed. That's not a good advert. Right, so I'm going to try and do this so that you can see it. Like, can you see it? Yes, you can. Okay, so I'm going to bring, right, so this is starting already. Can you see it starting to spin? So it's starting to spin because what it's doing is picking up the funnel of my third eye. Am I got that on video? Yeah. Okay, so it's starting to spin because, oh, it can feel that. Okay, I'm going to try and move it down a little bit to my throat. So it can pick up the energy of my throat. Okay, so that's a much different energy, much smaller. So we use this when we're with Reiki. We teach this so that we can actually read our own energy centers. So a pendulum can answer questions, it can divine information for you, it can read energy. So this is a whole step further. Like tarot cards aren't necessarily reading the energy, this can do both. So I've got so many pendulums. I've got one at work that has all the different color chakras, and it actually has beads on the ribbon. It has beads for each chakra. So you hold that chakra, that bead, as you measure that chakra, and it kind of connects you to that energy. But you don't need one of those. In actual fact, you can use a stone on a piece of rope. Anything can be a pendulum. You could take the necklace off that you're wearing now and use it as a pendulum. Anything that swings can be a pendulum. So I'm absolutely fascinated. We've covered so many different forms of divination. The last one being, we're going to end in a minute, oracle cards. So I was going to talk about these at the same time as tarot. And then I thought, don't think fauna will like that because the tarot is a whole art and it's ancient and it has all this mysticism and history and story behind it. And oracle cards don't. They're a much more modern form of divination. But if you've been to the academy, you'll see that there's, 30 decks of different cards. And so many different types of cards. So if you don't have any cards, I'd highly recommend you get some. And I'll tell you why. Yes, they're great to see what's happening today and look at the things, to divine information about your day, but they're also amazing for connecting with the parts of you that you don't connect with, for revealing hidden emotions or feelings, kind of shadow work. And it's really hard to shadow work yourself. But you can shadow work yourself with cards. Now, one of my favorite, these are the Wisdom of the Hidden Realms. And we do often use these at Coven. And these are by Colette Baron Reid. Now, the reason I love these is because they have both. Because they have an element of ally and challenger. So with every card, there is a light worker element and a shadow work element. So I'm going to end by pulling you a card because I know how much you love a card. I think I'll do everything that I end online with a card. And if Victoria's watching, these are the cards with the 2 horse kings. They don't have 2 horse kings now. We used this deck once at one of our events, and 2 of the ladies pulled the same card. And I've used these for so long, and there isn't 2 of those cards. And still to this day, we don't know how that happened. It was the horse king, and I remember it so vividly. But this is the deck. So I'm going to pull you one of these as we finish. So when I'm reading cards, I like to quieten my mind and I hold the cards a minute. I really like a knock. So like a tap 3 times and then pick a card. Okay, so this is your card. Oh, what a lovely card. So this is the Eyes of Beauty, and it's number 25, Positive Expectations and Clarity. So I'll hold that up for you to see. Oh, positive expectations and clarity. So not only are you moving forward, like the rune said, and progressing and going into all of that stuff, the outlook is pretty good. It's all going to be positive, clear. And I know specifically for one of the ladies that's watching tonight that I was with today, these are probably for you, aren't they? But it's always lovely to end with a card. And oracle cards, you don't really need to know anything. You don't really need to know the story of the tarot or the history of this. You just need to pick a card. And there's everything from angel cards to spirit animals, so many different types. What we do encourage, and we always do this when we're doing any kind of card reading, especially when we're with all the ladies in Coven, is not to look at the book. Not first, to look at the number. So we've already done numerology. Oh, that's an interesting number. To look at the words, to look at the meaning, and to look at the image, and actually to feel into that card and see what it means to you. Because all of these divination tools are actually designed to connect you to your own intuition so that you can trust your own knowing and your own feelings. And very often, things like the pendulum, things like the dowsing rods are confirmation tools. So we will do that to confirm what we think. And it can be really, really helpful to connect us to that intuition. So that oracle inside you, that mystic Meg inside you, that's just dying to connect to other realms and other energies, is looking for a divination tool. So whatever's really appealed to you today, whatever you feel most connected to or most interested in, that's where to start, because there's so many different things. And when you do start that, I want you to trust your intuition. Even if it says something else in the book, I want you to trust what you feel in your heart. And I want you to trust your first thought. So whenever I'm doing shadow work with people, or we're doing anything on a deeper level, it's not the second answer. It's the first thing that comes into your head that you try and push away. The one that you censor, the thing that you don't want to say, and then you think to find something else. That's the gold. Well, that first thought that comes. So if you pull a card and you're like, oh God, it's that and it means that, and I'm looking at the picture and it's like, trust what you feel straight away from the image, because you picked that card for a reason. So trust yourself. That is the most important thing. If you're interested in doing any of those courses of digging a little deeper with tarot or palmistry or numerology or the runes, then we do have courses coming up in the next couple of months. So please feel free to drop us a message if you do. But it's been absolutely amazing to be here. Hopefully we can agree that they're getting better. And after number 4, I didn't have to have anywhere near as much sherry before I came on the screen today. I didn't have any sherry. And I was concerned that I might not be able to fill the hour. But as usual, that's not a problem, is it? So thank you so much for watching. And I will see you next month. When I'll have another exciting topic. Not quite sure what that is yet, but something else really interesting to learn about in our Witchcraft Academy episode number 5. So thank you for joining me, and I will see you really soon. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.